Hello and welcome to Diplomatic Perspective on Global Television. I am Ramsey Enoch. Now let's go through some stories before we go into the discussion for the day. The U.S. Congress averted a Christmas-time government shutdown early Saturday after weeks of tense negotiation that went to the wire, passing a bill to fund U.S. federal agency through mid-March.
Under the previous order, the Senate will resume executive session to consider the following nominations in block. Calendar numbers 851, 853, 854, and 857. The question occurs on the nominations in block. All in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The nominations are confirmed on block. Under the previous order, the motion to reconsider is considered made and laid upon the table, and the President will be immediately notified of the Senate's actions.
Now to Cuba. Cuba President Miguel Diaz-Canel condemns the United States blockade and calls on citizens to march to celebrate free and sovereign as dignified as they have been since 1959, referring to the Cuban Revolution. Another story here says the European Union and Switzerland announced that they have sealed a new set of agreements aimed at calibrating relationship between the two neighbors. The deal reached after years of sometimes difficult negotiations, and it has already been denounced by the powerful hard-right Swiss People's Party, that is SVP, and Swiss Union have also expressed concern since its assumption of office. Now let's get to another story now from Nigeria, which is going to give us a link to the discussion for the day. President Bola Tinubu has activated the friendship he has also built over the time in his quest for Nigerians' development. The president has embarked on the reform to reposition the economy and put the country on the right track for optimal development based on his renewed hope agenda. To release this lofty objective, he is leaving no stone unturned, including leveraging his friendship and international connections. Now we will go on a quick break. After this break, we'll return and we'll get into the discussion proper, where we'll look at President Tinubu's diplomatic ties. It's so good to still have you back on Diplomatic Perspective. Well, we are getting into the discussion proper right away. I have with me in the studio Ambassador Dr. Martin Ohumobi. He is the former Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and he will be joining me on the conversation today as we look at President Bola Tinubu's a diplomatic routine. He's been traveling, and of course, we've been seeing some reactions from his travel. It's good to have you in the studio today on Diplomatic Perspective, Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Ramsey. It's a pleasure to be with you, as always. Thank you.
All right, let's quickly get into the conversation. The President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's diplomatic routine. Very important because, as a matter of fact, I think some persons have said that's to build relationship. And some other persons have said, hey, traveling to everywhere, that of France raised an eyebrow by some persons looking at what is happening between the French and, of course, Niger Republic, Burkina Faso, and their counterpart. Looking at the president's visit to France recently, what would you want to make of it? What's your thoughts?
Thank you very much, Ramsey. And I recall that in my last interaction with you, we talked a great deal about the president's diplomatic moves. And I commended it, and I said that he is the number one diplomat. He's the first diplomat, the president of a country. He's the number one diplomat in that country. But I remember also making a point that all this, it's good that all these moves are being made, but they have to be followed up. And at the moment, what is most challenging for diplomacy is the absence of ambassadors in Nigerian missions overseas. And I said, in diplomatic practice, ambassadors are the highest representation of any country in a country of interest. No one can do the work of an ambassador. The Vienna Convention is very explicit about this. So, and I said that fully assessing the impact of Mr. President on the diplomatic terrain is seriously undermined by the absence of Nigeria's ambassadors in the capital cities of the world. The challenge is that when the president visits those places and makes the impact that he normally makes, there is no follow-up. And the follow-up is critical. Implementation is critical. And that can only be in the best interest of the country, that we have designated ambassadors who represent Mr. President in diplomatic practice in those countries. And it's also, apart from just being a diplomatic practice, it's also a way of showing that you also recognize those countries. When you have ambassadorial representation, it's the highest level of representation and the highest recognition you can give to a country, the sovereignty and independence of that country. But if you don't have an ambassador there and that country has an ambassador in your country, it means that you underestimate and underplay their relevance to you. And there is a way in long term that it will have its negative repercussions. So, but anyway, let me leave that now and move on to your current issue. You've just posed a new level of this, and that is the president's visit to France and Franco-Nigerian relations. This is a matter that is really, I think, is extremely important and is topical as well. For me as a historian, I will speak from the perspective of history. What became known as Nigeria and what became known as Francophone countries were fabrications by those alien powers. They were concoctions by them of what they thought nations should be. Nigeria was an amalgam of over 276 ethnic nationalities. And what was particularly significant about the Nigerian fabrication of 1914 was Nigeria contained some of the most ancient empires of African kingdoms. Benin Empire, Oyo Empire, the Sokoto Caliphate, what have you, Kanem Borno Empire. Their capital cities were all in Nigeria. So you bring all of this together as one entity called Nigeria. With over 500 languages spoken here, languages are distinct as Russia is from Chinese in one country called Nigeria. And what became Nigeria became the largest, one of the biggest countries on the continent of Africa. And in terms of resources, huge resources are mounted here. What is today ECOWAS? Nigerian economy is about 65% of ECOWAS economy. The population of Nigeria is more than half of that of ECOWAS. So you can see the disproportion, the massiveness of Nigeria. And that has implications for some of the colonial powers were thinking about this, particularly France thought about this for Nigeria. And that's why it's as a historian, I have to also tell you this, that the Anglo-French rivalry that produced those countries, we inherited as new independent countries, the Francophone, Anglophone animosities were passed on into our system, in our educational system, and whatever. Yes, subsequently, the European Union came that brought Europe together, but they were not always together. And so their colonies tended to follow their masters, in quote. So Nigeria was Anglophone and followed Britain and parliamentary system. The Francophone countries were assimilated and they were Francophone. They were speaking beautiful French, married to French ladies. And so that also now divided black people, Africans, who were their proteges, who came out from these systems. Was it surprising, therefore, that when Nigeria structure was ruptured in 1966, when civil war broke out in Nigeria, who was the only European country that recognized the breakup of Nigeria? It was France.
Oh, France recognized the breakup of Nigeria.
No, excuse me. Let me finish. France recognized Biafra.
Okay.
And encouraged Francophone countries to support that move. Britain didn't. America did not do it directly, even though nobody knew where they stood on this matter. But it was very significant for us as young people then when we heard the kind of support that the breakup of the secessionists were getting from France and the Francophone countries that were our neighbors. So that's what history says, and no one can really contradict that. So now we have a scenario in which the Francophone countries, who are always our brothers, remember that the war that brought Nigeria, that civil war that we fought, we had support, very consistent support from our northern neighbors. Nigerians and all of that supported us unofficially, even militarily. And don't quote me on this, but that's what we heard, and that's what I think happened, even though I don't think it's documented. So the point I'm trying to make is this, that why now? Why now? The Francophone countries, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, have broken away from France. They've also tried to break away from ECOWAS because of the way we responded to their crisis. Let us not go into the history of colonialism. There was no colonialism that was better in one place than the other. But if you were to make such a an analysis, I think the Francophone countries were assimilated. That's the word, assimilation. We were not assimilated. I went to Oxford, but I'm Nigerian, personified. And there was no attempt to colonize me intellectually and morally and whatever. But that's what goes on in those countries.
Okay, in the Francophone
The fact that you speak French, you should not just speak French. You should speak French like an assimilated French person. The budget of France is heavily dependent on the budget from Africa. And I don't know how many billions of African money Francophone countries are reserved in France. Did those countries have central banks in their respective countries? I don't know. So the point is this, that the level of assimilation that took place, assimilation they called it, was so profound and so deep, unlike in the Francophone countries. So now they got tired, the young people got tired and said, hey, we've had enough. We want to be our own. We want to be truly, truly independent. I thought of from our side as Nigerians, we too should show some empathy. Because we have a philosophy in our foreign relations which is called concentricism, the concentric cycles. Concentricism means that you think about yourself and your immediate neighbors, ECOWAS, and then Africa, then globally.
All right, Prof, there was a statement made by Macron that a lot of people are actually reacting to when he said, he argued that Nigeria will become a natural choice, okay, for French companies in Africa. What does that mean to you?
No, that's beautiful. A non-Nigerian diplomat will be against global peace and security and global development and collaboration. We cannot we are not hostile to France. We just want them to also understand our peculiarities and our interests and take into account our interests as Nigerians. We are not assimilated, and we will not be assimilated. We will be Nigerian. We will be African. Those are undeniable elements. Our constitution is very clear on what the guidelines and the principles of our foreign policy is. Africa first. Afrocentrism is the cornerstone of our foreign policy. When we pursue Afrocentrism, we are not doing it to please anybody. We are doing it because that's who we are. So, we also understand, as Africanists, as Nigerians, that the world is a global village. If it's not good in France, it won't necessarily be good for Nigeria. If it's not good in Nigeria, it shouldn't be good for France. In a world that where no country is an island to itself, the world is becoming a global village. And that globalization has to be reflected in the way that we conduct and manage our foreign policies, including not just of the ex-colonial countries, but also of the so-called colonizing powers who think that they must always be there and the rest of the world needs to be down there. That is where the crisis comes from. But if we believe in genuine partnership and development and collaboration and world peace, as we enunciate and we pontificate in the United Nations, we go there and read powerful statements every year. But those statements are just there. So we need to actualize this. So we are not against any country in the world. Nigeria, by virtue of our constitution, is not against any country in the world. We want friendship, we want collaboration, and that's what Nigeria has stood out for. Nigeria is one of the largest peacekeeping nations in the world. We love peace, we love development. But please do so based on certain platforms of respect for our dignity, respect for who we are, and our own national interest too. And we'll do the same with you.
As it is right now, some Nigerians believe that for France to actually accept this, the reception was massive and everything, and Macron knowing who he is, and the way the relationship went, some persons are thinking, some Nigerians are thinking that there might be something that France is eyeing in Nigeria now that there is a disconnect, all right, with some of our neighbors here.
Look, my enemy must not be your enemy. Otherwise, there will be no peace. What is required is empathy, is understanding, is your own interest as well. But I won't say because this is this, therefore this is this. But we also are neighbors. We're neighbors. We must show empathy to the situation in Mali, in Chad, in Burkina Faso, in all these countries, because they are our brothers, actually. So we cannot just relate to them as if they are some strangers. No, they are not. So I think what is really necessary is for us to work together collaboratively, with empathy, with understanding, knowing who we are and what we want and our interests. Our interest is not to inherit enemies of our friend. Just like we would not inherit. We want to make friends with as many people as possible, but we'll do so on equity, justice, and fair play, with respect and for the dignity of our dignity and dignity of everybody, including our brothers who are our neighbors.
Apart from France now, which country you as an ambassador, former ambassador, as a former ambassador, which country do you think Nigeria is supposed to hold very tightly as far as relationship is concerned, apart from France?
Nigeria must pursue a policy that is in line with its interests. What does Nigeria want at this time? What does our constitution say about what our interests are, what our policy should be? What is it that Nigeria needs now to advance its economic development? What does Nigeria need now to address the critical issues of security, the issues of unemployment of our young people? What does Nigeria need to get to actualize its potentials? We keep talking about Nigeria as a potential, is the giant of Africa. How do we make this a reality? Which country in the world or which countries of the world will help us to realize this, working with us will help us to realize these objectives? I think this is what every government must strive to unravel. And it seems to me now that if any country that really wants to really help us. And there are many countries in the world. We don't have to be stuck with those we have been with for years. We can vary it, because what is important really is leverage. Nigeria is a big country. Nigeria is a powerful country. Nigeria is a blessed country. Nigeria has resources to dictate it. But what we are lacking, our challenge, as I have always said, is leadership. Nemo dat non quam habet. You cannot give what you do not have. And fundamentally, as a nation, we have a flawed leadership selection process. And I'm not just talking about political leadership, I'm talking about leadership across the sectors. So we must ensure that we have a system that addresses this crisis so that we can always put our best foot forward. And this is just an African thing. It's not just a Nigerian thing. It's an African thing. Of all the races that were colonized, Africa still remains at the bottom. India was colonized. Where is India today? China was defeated in the Manchuria War of 1937. Where is China today? After Mao Zedong. The Asian countries, they were also colonized. Where are they today? Where is Africa in all of this quagmire? Why is Africa where it is? What should Africa do about it? And I think for me, and many scholars and practitioners will agree, we have to have a system that produces the finest. Not the finest that will japa, the finest that will find an enabling environment and will stay here and develop their countries. Britain was developed by British people. America was developed by Americans. Who should develop Nigeria? Nigerians must develop Nigeria. And Africans must develop Africa.
All right, thank you very much. Well, Africans must develop Africans. Time is running out. I think this is going to be the size of the discussion. But then, before I finally let you go, I would like to ask this final question, which is going to get a very brief answer. As it is right now, the economy of the nation is being challenged, is facing a whole lot of challenge. Don't you think this is the right time that Nigeria is supposed to know the country that really loves Nigeria based on interventions?
Nigeria should remain open, but Nigeria must be discerning. Remaining open, but exercise discernment. It is not talk. It is not signing agreements. It's actualizing and implementing policies and actions that will take the economy of Nigeria to the next level.
All right, thank you very much. Action is what we need right now, not just putting pen to paper alone. And so many things need to be done according to the ambassador so that the Nigerian relationship with other countries can translate into something tangible that even the average, or as the case may be, every Nigerian will have a feeling of it. Thank you very much, Ambassador Martins, for coming on Diplomatic Perspective today.
Thank you very much, Ramsey, for having me. God bless you.
Thank you. All right, thank you for joining us on Diplomatic Perspective, and this is going to be the size of the discussion for today. We will come on your way again for more editions of Diplomatic Perspective as we take you around the world. My name is Ramsey Enoch Agbo. Thanks, and bye-bye for now.